Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Combermere Live. Tonight, we have a special Combermerean, Pedro Corbin, joining us. Welcome, Pedro, to
Hi,
Combermere Live.
good evening, Hess. It's a pleasure to be here, Combermere Live. Pleasure to see you after all these years and
Yes,
to be
sir.
here with you.
Good, good. Well, for those who don't know, Pedro was one of our best cricketers when I was at school. And so his influence on me and other youngsters was immense. He might not have even known it. We used to watch Pedro bat and wonder how a guy so small could score all these runs off of all these fast bowlers. It was amazing. It was quite amazing. So, Pedro, what I'd like to do is let's start at the beginning and tell us where you grew up and your memories of your childhood.
Okay, Hess. I grew up in a little small village called Rose Hill, St. Peter. A lot of people would be more familiar with Mile and a Quarter, but Rose Hill is the road that took you across from Mile and a Quarter that would take you to St. Lucy's Parish Church. So that is where I grew up as a young boy. My cricketing exploits would start in the road right in front of our house. We used to have some very serious test matches on the road.
Okay.
So that is my childhood. Growing up in that area, it really was a fun time to be had in those days. It was a very close-knit neighborhood, and we all looked out for each other.
Now, what primary school did you go to?
I attended All Saints Primary School. That was just up the hill from close to where I live. It was a good 15 to 20-minute walk to school every morning and back. And that school really started to also hone my skills with cricket, because I'd always loved cricket. That was the only sport that I ever wanted to be part of. I dabbled in some athletics while I was at Combermere, but cricket was my number one forte.
Okay. So then when you came into Combermere, what were your early experiences at Combermere when you first got to this big institution and realized, wow, I'm in secondary school now, it's a different world?
Well, like every youngster, I was really and truly very happy to be at Combermere. But before I got there, I remember when in those days, we had to put down the schools that we wanted to go to. And I had a brother who was still at Combermere, Elliot Corbin. I don't know if many of you might remember him. And my mother obviously wanted me to go to Harrison College, like everyone else. She wanted to go to their so-called best school at the time.
Uh-huh.
And I put Harrison College as number one, and Combermere as number two, and I did not put a third school. I knew I had a confidence in myself to pass the exam. I really did not want to go to Harrison College. I wanted to go to Combermere. And as fate would have it, I didn't plan it, but as fate would have it, I failed college by 3 points. And I had a very close friend from my upbringing. He's still probably my best friend still, a fellow named Colin no relative of mine. But we grew up together, and we were always competing with each other. He went to college. And in those days, if you remember, having spent the first year in lower 1A, when the exam came around again, you could have sat the exam again to give yourself an opportunity to go to Harrison College.
Definitely, yeah.
I just simply refused to take the exam. I just said, Combermere, it is for me. I had heard enough about Combermere from my brother and a lot of his friends, and including Dyton Maynard, who was a regular visitor to our home. And I felt very comfortable at Combermere. And in actual fact, when I first met him, my brother was in his last year at Combermere.
Okay.
So he was a prefect. So I had some privileges that a lot of other youngsters did not have. In those days, you were on the first floor. That is where you belong. You can't dare go on the second floor, third floor. You'll get your head slapped up a lot.
Yes.
Well, I ventured to the third floor on many occasions because my brother was a prefect. And so no one messed with me. So I was a bit spoiled in the early days at Combermere.
Oh, wow. That's good. I was taken advantage of because I didn't know anybody there. As a youngster, they would come and grab me and say, "Yo, give me your lunch money."
That's correct. That's what it was in those days, right?
Yeah.
And none of us, I don't think, came out any worse for it. To be quite honest with you, I think it was lessons. It was lessons learned in that you must know your place as a youngster.
Yes.
Before you start to, as we would say, get uppity.
There was a hierarchy. You could not go up on the third floor.
That's correct. You couldn't
Yes.
go, and then the second formers and the third formers who were on that floor, you couldn't go up there either. So to
Yes.
even get to the top floor was,
You had
that's
to earn
impossible.
your way up there.
You earn your way up there. That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
So give me your memories of the teachers and who made an impression on you.
Well, the first teacher, obviously, that would have made an impression on me would have been Dighton Maynard. And I knew Dighton before I actually got into Combermere. My brother was a very keen hockey player. I think he actually captained the school hockey team. I know
Okay.
Dighton loved his hockey. And so he became a close family friend through my brother. And so I had met him before I went into Combermere. And he didn't start to teach me until he taught me geography in upper 1B. But I was with Harry Seeley in lower 1A. I remember Miss Gamble in lower 1A. She used to teach Spanish. There was a gentleman, his name slips me right now, but those are the two teachers that come to mind. I had Mrs. Pyle as well too.
Yeah.
She was one of my first teachers at school. Can't remember the other names off the top of my head. I'm getting older now, so the names don't.
But I will give you a little hint. Give me an account of your encounters with bribery, Mr. Maynard. That Maynard.
But he actually, I came across him. I think it was in second form because his pilot taught us geography in first form, but then he took over.
Uh-huh.
I remember in second form, geography was my favorite subject until I met bribery. During the term, I would fail geography. Exam time, I would pass geography. So I grew something to be very dismissive of him.
Okay.
Because I knew I was going to pass the exam at the end of the school term. But I remember in second form, once 2B, I suffered with my eyes a lot at school with something called conjunctivitis. So sometimes it would flare up and I would be away from school for a week or two. And in that time, I was actually away from school for 2 weeks. And when I went back to school, Mr. Maynard, with his usual style of teaching, every year, a certain amount of marks were given by him asking questions and going around the class, going around the school, and going around the class. And the question he had for the class that day when I went back to school was, what is the Golden Gate Bridge? I sat in the second row at school. I was about number 8, number 9 or 10, something like that. And everyone started the thing. The Golden Gate Bridge is a bridge. Next. The Golden Gate Bridge is a bridge. Next. Golden Gate. I know what it is. I know it's a bridge. That is not the question I'm asking you. So I decided in my smart way, but I got him this time. I really am going to mix him up. So when he got to me, I blurted out, the Golden Gate is one made of gold. And I really could not hold back my laughter. The whole class started up with serious rupturous laughter. I was unceremoniously removed from class and walked down to the headmaster's office immediately after the class, after the 40-minute period finished, and told Bumpy, Mr. Moore, rest his soul, he was advised that I was making a mockery of him in class. And that was the first and only time that I ever got a caning. 6 of the best for trying to be smart.
Did he beat you with a golden cane?
He beat me. I remember, forget that cane. It was a nice brown cane, about 2 inches wide and about a quarter inch thick.
I remember bribery. Next. He would look at some fellas and say, "You wouldn't even have a clue." Next.
And I'm not wasting my time with you. Next. And then he just went straight on.
Oh my goodness.
He was a character and always very prim and proper.
Yes.
He was always dressed down in his suit, nothing out of place. You had to. He set an example for us to follow in terms of making sure that we were all dressed very, very neat. And I must give him credit for that. But I still pass my geography at exam at all times.
Okay. Good. Now this question comes to mind. If you were influenced by Mr. Maynard, Dighton Maynard, how come you were in the cadets or played hockey?
Well, from the time we went to school, remember I told you earlier, I was always involved in cricket.
Yes.
And we had a club called the 4-H Club, All Saints 4-H Club. So by the time I left All Saints School, I was already playing cricket for the 4-H Club. And we used to play something which was something like the BCL League. but it was a lot of 4H clubs. So I had started to play cricket at that level, and I might add, I was scoring quite a number of runs. Hainsley Ben, I don't know if you all remember Hainsley Ben.
Yes,
Hainsley Zarben. He was another person that was very influential in my childhood days at All Saints School. He actually kept a lot of the records of the paper clippings of my exploits at cricket for the 4H club. So by the time I got to Combermere, cricket was in my blood already. I never liked hockey. I found that the stick used to hit a little bit too hard.
Yeah.
I remember, I said earlier before we started the show, I was a little small fella.
Yeah.
Right? And trying to run around in that ball was not good. Footballing was also too, just too physical. And I really wasn't able to, I wasn't able to take those blows. So I got into cricket very, very early. Dyson did put me into the cadets. Not what I said, put me into the cadets. I didn't join. He enrolled me, right? Told my parents I had to come in the cadets. And that was when I was in upper first, I think. But then if you remember those, I had a big afro. Upper first, second.
Yes.
And then I was told I would have to cut my hair if I really wanted to be part of the cadets. And I told Dice, that ain't happening.
Yeah.
So I did not spend very much time in the cadets. And to his credit, he did not try to force me to cut my hair.
Okay.
He knew that I was focusing on cricket, and he really showed me, pointing me in the direction to continue playing cricket. I think in actual fact, Harcourt might remember this. I think I started to play second division cricket for the school when I was 13 years old.
Wow.
While I was still playing out of 15.
But it's amazing that you said that you suffered with conjunctivitis. How could, I know you're opening batsman, you have to be on your P's and Q's as an opening batsman to see that ball coming at you at 100 miles an hour. How were you able to do that?
Well,
just the reflexes too, obviously.
Somehow the conjunctivitis never acted up during the cricket season.
Okay.
All right, so I don't know that much that. But it's not something that really affected my eyesight. More or less, my eyes would get very watery and run a lot of mucus and be swollen. But it didn't really affect my eyesight per se. But I must say it really did not impact me very much during the cricket season. It's either because I was so soup for cricket that I just did not think about it or allow it to happen. But it was really in second form that it knocked me around quite a bit with that. But I was even told to wear glasses that I didn't really need.
Wow.
At that time. But it never really impacted. It didn't stop me from picking up these quick bowlers.
Okay. Now, we talked about the teachers. Who were the students around you and the cricketers that you looked up to when you first came to Combermere? Because when I first came to Combermere, Ricky Craig and Winslow Ashby were still there, right? And as a youngster, I looked up to you also, and Wayne Blackman and Neil Haynes and George Francis and George Reefer, them type of guys. So who did you look up to and want to emulate at Combermere as a cricketer?
Well, I just like anyone else, Ashby and Craig were people that I looked up to at first. Remember these guys put on an opening partnership. I think it was against the BCL of over 200 runs.
Yes, I remember that. Both of them scored centuries.
That's right. Both of them scored centuries. And then on another occasion, when Empire was leading the competition to win and came up against Combermere, and the same Ashby and Craig really held on to them and put some serious lashes. And we drew that match that they had to win in order to win the championship. So I saw the two of them first as my two cricketing icons. And then Wayne Blackman, of course, was in that era as well too. Wayne reminded me while I was there last time that I just could not make that team yet because I had to go through Ashby and Craig and Blackman. And I said, well, that is true. But remember, they were a couple of years ahead of me.
Yes.
And when my turn, I took my turn to get there.
Yeah.
And then strangely enough, some person that really I also looked up to was Orlando Green. A lot of people didn't recognize that Orlando. Snoops, he played cricket as well.
Yes.
But I also looked up to him because I would leave my home in St. Peter and go to Combermere School on Saturday mornings just to run cross country with him, 3 miles. But I admired him as a cricketer as well. So those were the people. Then there was Jacko and Harcourt. Remember Jacko?
What about Harcourt Mason?
Harcourt was an average player at that time. But Harcourt was some person that we always looked up to as well, because Harcourt not only he gave us a lot of good advice as youngsters coming into the class. I think Harcourt might have been a year or two ahead of me. And we looked up to Harcourt for some good sound advice to keep us on the straight and narrow path.
Well, speaking of Harcourt, we have him in the studio. So we'll have Harcourt come on and join us now and see if he can refute your statements that he was a mediocre cricketer.
I never said mediocre.
Welcome, Harcourt.
Thanks, Hassan. First of all,
a short rising ball was just balled at you. I want to see how you can handle it.
I just leave it alone. I just get out of here. But firstly, just let me say thanks for having me. Pleasure to be able to speak here with Pedro about his exploits as a youngster. Yes, maybe average. I have my moments in with both bat and ball and cricket. Yeah, but I dabbled in everything in four sports actually for the school. So and I think personally, it actually surprised me when Colonel Maynard said, okay, Harcourt, I think you're going to captain the intermediate team. And that was immediately after the likes of Ashley and Craig, because I think Ricky stayed on a year longer than Winslow.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
So then, but once he could have played to the end of the season, but once September came, then you had to get a schoolboy captain in the team. So I was that person. And I think
that was still the first division team, Harcourt.
No, that was intermediate.
Intermediate? I thought it was still the first division team that you
captained. No, because I never played intermediate first division. I think the person in our era that played first division would have been Patchy, Winslow Haynes. But of course, me and Blackman, who was a little older than us, he played first division as well. But I didn't play. Mikey didn't play. Neil didn't play. So we all played in the intermediate. But but firstly, let me go back before I actually talk about Pedro's exploits. But I remember as a youngster, well, not a youngster, but in fifth form I would have been, and going down to Pedro's house in Rose Hill, the same Dyton Maynard. He would take a bunch of us down here. I don't remember that, Pedro.
Yes,
we would come down to your house every now and then, just to enjoy the country scenery.
Good country life.
Good country life. And we're not bringing any tears out of school, but we enjoyed those trips down to the country, with your family and so on. So yeah, so that was how I really got close to Pedro. But Pedro came in, and you could see from day one, from ball one, this youngster. I mean, I'm sure he wasn't 100 pounds then.
Yeah.
You see this little skinny guy, and he's batting. I mean, our backs for days, days on end. Not a fast scorer, but someone who will turn the strike around. He would get, might not hit a four, but he will bat long periods, and get his runs, accumulate his runs. And that was one of the things that we noticed about this youngster in first form, second form. So I'm pretty sure that Pedro would have played for the under 15 team then round 3 as early as second form. Might have been first form too, Pedro.
I was in upper one. We played when I started to play under 15
in round 3. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So first form, upper first. So this youngster, he's coming into the team and getting some runs in the round 3 competition. So he goes up into the second division. So I think by third form, Pedro was playing intermediate.
Yeah.
I'm not only playing intermediate, but playing intermediate and performing well. So he always had this knack for it, and and like he said, while the rest of us maybe dabbled in other sports, he was really and truly that die-hard cricketer and hell bent on going places with cricket.
Yeah, I remember as a youngster going over by the opposite field, because I was playing second division for Combermere at the time. So sometimes the intermediate team would be playing on the other big field, and I would go over and watch Pedro, and I would be in amazement how this little small man can score all these runs off of these fast bowlers, and you're afraid and tall man behind the ball, and he's just pushing it there and flicking it there, and Next thing you know, he's 100. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, yeah.
Man.
And not only that, but in those days there were no helmets,
Yeah.
so your technique had to be sharp. So you were getting in behind the ball and you were seeing the ball, the ones that are coming, that bunks in you, swaying, you moving around. And that was what Pedro was able to do. You saw that in him from the time he walked through those school gates and took up a back.
Well, we
And
also have to give kudos to Clifton Bourne, the groundsman, for keeping them grounds in pretty good shape.
Yeah,
Because
that is true. I actually
yeah,
remembered. I don't know if you remember a bit, Harcourt. My very first second division game was against RPTC.
mhm,
And when I walked up to bat, we bowled them out the afternoon, and we probably had about half hour to bat. And they had a left arm fast bowler. I can't remember his first name, but his last name was Robinson. And
Robinson.
he,
Yeah,
yes, you
correct.
remember, and he was quick. And I
Yes.
remember when he walked out to bat, when he walked out to open the innings as this 13-year-old boy, he was asked about it. Where you going, right? By that time, the pads were almost up past my
Yes.
thighs.
I remember that.
you know. And I remember forgetting when the first couple of balls whizzed past me. I said, "Whoa, this is now a different breed of fish, right?" But I
Right.
also remember and about the second over, because we had very little time to bat, and I was determined that I wasn't going to get out, but I was not going to allow them to intimidate me. And when I hooked him out the ground, I think that gained some respect at that point in time to recognize that although he might be small, I can handle myself pretty well. And we became good friends after that, Robbie.
Yeah.
He was really, really quick, for
Yeah.
sure.
Talking about those pads though, Pedro, not only were they up to your chest, they probably could have wrapped around your legs about twice.
That is right. You said it. You said it right. I was probably barely over 100 pounds, if over 100 pounds. You know, but
Yeah, right.
Pedro, where did all this good confidence come from that you weren't intimidated, you know what I mean, as a 13-year-old facing big men?
I remember I said earlier the early days playing for the 4-H club.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was a regular feature in the news on Mondays, representing the All Saints 4-H club with the highest scores, a couple of hundreds, and I came across some pretty quick bowlers in those times. And our home ground was Combermere School.
Okay.
And if you remember that pitch,
Yeah.
that pitch was a batsman's paradise, right? So in order for you to really get a ball bouncing sharply, you had to hit it halfway down the wicket.
Mm-hmm.
And by then, you can get. I learned to bat without a helmet, so I never used a helmet in my life. Actually, I used it once. I will tell you about that later. So the whole idea was to get behind the ball, and once you got behind the ball, you could, as Harcourt said, you could easily duck, move your head out the way.
Mm-hmm.
Not like how these fellas are nowadays. And then because I was small, a lot of my runs came behind the wicket.
Yes.
Right? Or just forward the square, right? We could time the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, I never hooked the ball off of my face, off my nose. I always had the ball outside of my left eye, so that if I missed, it would just pass my head.
Okay.
But nowadays, because people have helmets, they're hooking the ball from over their right eye, and when they do miss, they're struck in the head. There's a guy in Australia now who's being struck quite a few times. And they're wondering if he should really go back to play cricket because he just blacks out from time to time. And all of that is because batting a helmet.
Wow.
So I never liked the helmet, to be quite honest with you.
Wow.
But you know what, too, Pedro, playing that 4-H cricket would have been a good experience
Oh, yeah.
because one of the things that in 4-H cricket, and I also played a little bit of youth cricket. You had some raw fast bowlers. Probably not representing the school, not representing the club, but they were
Correct.
just raw talent and bowling fast. And one ball might be wide outside or something. The next one might be wide outside the next stump, and the next one might be coming at you. So you
Correct.
always have to be really on your guard and looking and picking up the line and the length of these bowlers. So that was a good experience for you, Pedro,
Yeah.
playing that before, even
It
before
really
coming to
was.
Combermere.
It really. I remember there was a club called St. Silas, so St. James, and they had some of the quickest bowlers that you could come across. And when we played them at Combermere, I think I scored like 135 in that game. And this fast, I can't remember his name, but his face is in front of me. And I remember getting in the wicket and hitting him over mid wicket. Something that I would not normally do. I would be hitting it back with a square. But after you get confidence in playing Combermere School for so long, you know you can really get in and play a lot of shots. But that you're quite correct. We had a lot of fast bowlers in that league who were very erratic fast bowlers, and so you had to be on your P's and Q's at all times.
I know you mentioned Coach Perry. I was at Coach Perry last week, and I was telling the guys that my experience at Coach Perry playing cricket. The wicket was always flat through and outfield fast. And once you get that ball in that space, it's four runs.
Correct.
Lovely atmosphere at Coach Perry.
It was lovely atmosphere. My brother played cricket for Coach Perry, and that's probably one. He's my second brother in the family, kind of last of six. And he also would have had a lot of influence because I would have gone down to watch him play cricket. Him and Keith Babb, and they were two of the finer batsmen he had in those times, that never really made it up to the Barbados level.
So when you left Combermere, what happened with your cricketing exploits? Who did you go and play for?
Well, like what Harcourt said earlier, I actually started to play for Carlton. And I actually started to play for Carlton. The last year at school, you were supposed to play until the school term started in September.
Yeah.
And Mr. Randall Hutchison had seen me at trials. I was actually called to trials for the Barbados senior team at 16.
I remember that, yes.
At 16.
Yes.
And Mr. Randall had always told me he wanted me to come to Carlton. And he knew Dighton Maynard well, so he spoke to Dighton to ask the school to give me a release so that I could come to Carlton from the beginning of the season.
Wow.
So my last year at school, I did not play for the school at all. I started to play for Carlton. And that was a good move for me at that time, because I felt at that time I was really into my cricket and I wanted to get to play for Barbados. I wanted to get into, West Indies team and that sort of stuff. So I went there to Carlton. And before I went to Carlton, though, I was in 76 and 75, I actually played for the Barbados under 19 team. We were playing in Guyana.
Okay.
Calvin Hope was the captain at that time. And then we went on to the second year I played for the under 19. I was the vice captain. My good friend Mako, Lord rest his soul in peace, Malcolm Marshall, was the captain of that side. And that is the year when Noel Brooms was over age and caused us to be disqualified, having won our first game against the Windwards.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we were very angry with him. And Coach Simon Nurse, who was also very instrumental in my upbringing of the cricket as well, too, because as manager, these are things he should have known. Yeah. But I went on to Carlton, and I must say I had some relatively good seasons at Carlton. Got called to trials again, but didn't make the side. And then I remember playing in the trial game, and I scored not in 46 in that trial game. And I continued to go to trials, and the next game that was picked, I was told that I'm a reserve. I am not going to take part in the game. I said, but why? Said, well, we looking at a core team now. I said, yes, but I should still be able to bat. And they told me, no, we will only need you if you're going to be fielding. And I remember speaking to Mr. His name slips me now, Griffith. To tell him that my boss is giving me time off to come to cricket practice and to come to make sure that I can possibly avail myself to get a play for Barbados. And if I'm not taking part in the game, it's not fair for him to be giving me time off, and I'm not taking part in the game to enhance my position. Mm-hmm. So I asked respectfully not to attend the practice game, but I continued to go to practice. Mm-hmm. And the next year I scored over 500 runs again, and I was not selected for trials. And when Mr. Hutchison inquired about it, he was told by Mr. Griffith that I am a rude boy.
Oh, boy.
He recited that incident.
Wow.
Those were the days where you could not question the adult.
Yeah, you can't question authority. Huh? Who's this man telling me this? Yes.
But I had some good times playing for cricket. As a matter of fact, my very first season, my first 100 was scored against Empire Cricket Club. And that had Gregory Armstrong running in from down by the site screen.
Site screen, yeah.
and he was
pushing off the wall.
Pushing off the wall, as you would say then, and Pierre Phillip was at the other end.
Jeez.
Right? And that was a baptism. I think it was either the second or the third game that we played.
Wow.
Of course, I had a baptism at Carlton as well too, because Johnny Burt was still playing for Carlton.
Uh-huh.
Johnny had an action that right arm used to bend a little bit sometimes more than what it
especially when the comb came out.
When the comb came out,
The comb came out, you know.
So Johnny gave me a very serious baptism in the nets when I went down to Carlton Club. And I mean, when I say serious, some serious boxers. He wasn't pitching the ball at all. And then I asked him after the game, but Johnny, we are playing for the same team. He said, but when you get out there in the middle playing against other team, they're not going to be thinking about that. Okay, so I'm going to let you see what you're in for. And I must say, it was a very good experience playing with Johnny in those days. So I had some good times. I was asked this question only last night at a function I was at, in terms of when people realized that I used to play cricket. Who was my most intimidating fast bowler?
Yes.
I don't think any of you would call the name that I'm about to call.
Okay, I would be calling Silly Clark.
Well, you have it correct.
Silly Clark, man.
Silly Clark was the most awkward bowler that I have ever come across.
Yeah. And
he was quick with it, off a very short run, and he had the ability to get the ball up from a very good length. But
I would also say this about Silly. If you hit Silly for a 4, he can turn into a beast. You understand?
You remember when night cricket started in Barbados?
Uh-huh.
We played a game against the BCL. I think it was the very first game of the night cricket. And by then, I think it was like 1981. And Silly and myself had become good friends. And I had a pact with Silly that I will not hook him. Okay. I will not beat him about the place. And he will not try to kill me. I remember in the height, I was probably in the 30s or 40s, batting pretty well. And in the height of the moment, Silly hit down a sharp ball at me that probably got up just above my waist. And I smacked it over my wicket, right onto the cycle track.
Wow.
Over my wicket. And the whole stadium erupted. Probably had about 6,000 or 7,000 people in the stadium. And Silly Clark walked down the pitch to me and said, I thought we were friends. I said to Silly, that was a mistake. That was just in the heat of the moment. I won't do that again. Needless to say, as you say, Hess, the next ball got across my face. Right. And I walked down the pitch to him and said, well, Silly, I could have hooked that one, right? But he said, don't bother with it, right? So we're now even. No more blows for you. I'm going to respect you and take my runs off of everyone else. And, that is what it was. But Silly was very, very, very awkward. Very awkward. I mean, and I would have played against the same Malcolm Marshall. I would have played against Wayne Daniel from school days.
Yeah.
Graham. I think Graham from
Ronald Graham from Ellerslie.
Yeah.
Ronald Graham from Ellerslie School.
Yeah.
Mosley. These Franklin Stevenson.
Wow.
These are the fellas that I came up against. Garner. I would have played against Garner as well too. And that trial game I played when I was 16 years old, it was not a pleasant thing because the pitch was not really very well prepared. And they did not allow me to open because they felt like I was too small to go there and take on these guys.
Yeah.
Who had been playing for
this against Kevin Wireless?
No, but this is the trial game.
Oh, the trial game.
Trial game.
Yeah, it is a trial game. And I had to go and still field for the team that I was to be batting for. And when I was out there and see how you remember Roland Butcher? He had just come out for England to try to play for Barbados.
Yeah.
And he was running around. Literally. Alvin Greenwich was running around.
Wow.
And let me tell you something. When I went there to bat, I did not want any part of any of them. The pitch was just a match yet called off, actually. It was not a good pitch to play trials on. But that was a serious baptism that I had. And then we talk about the helmets. Desmond became Desmond's opening partner.
I was about to ask you that because you batted with Desmond
I batted with Desmond. And in those days, 77, 78, 77 through to 80, the headlines would be perfect sunshine, rather good. What will be Carlton's score today? I mean, we were the headline because we used to beat a lot of ball.
Wow.
And it was not unusual for us to put on 300 runs in a day easily.
Wow.
Desmond would be scoring some big scores. I'd be having some big scores, and Lionel Sandiford, who to my mind was probably the best batsman that never played for Barbados as well. And we put on some good scores against everyone. And I remember Desmond coming back from World Series cricket, and that is when they started to use helmets, and he had a white helmet and encouraged me to bat in it against YMPC. And YMPC had a fast bowler, not quick really, but he was a round arm fast bowler. I can't remember his name
Max
now.
Walker.
Max
Walker.
Walker.
Charles Allen. Charles Allen.
Yeah.
A wrong-footed bowler.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, wrong-footed bowler. And he was rushing in and bouncing at me. He got Desmond out early. And Desmond had told me he gave me the helmet to put on after he got out. And every time I got in line to try to hook the ball, because the weight of the helmet, it kept moving my head. So as you know, as Harcourt mentioned earlier, you get behind the ball, you keep your eye on the ball. So once your head move, you lose sight of the ball momentarily. Yeah. And so I promptly took off the helmet and dared him to bounce at me. And the very next ball, when he bounced it, I hit it right down the hospital down there. Bayview. Right? And they said, well, this is now going to be some blows, because I am now feeling myself because my head is steady.
Yeah.
And Desmond continued to bat with a helmet, and I never used a helmet until I retired from cricket.
Wow.
Rather early.
Wow.
Okay.
That's amazing.
Pedro, sorry, but you let me backtrack a bit, because at school, I captained the team up to 1974 when I left school. I'm sure that you took over the captaincy from me in the intermediate team.
Yeah, I did. I took over the captaincy in the intermediate team. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So then you would have had a team with the likes of the George Reefers and Clyde Maskell.
When I first came into the intermediate side, George was playing second division. I actually brought George into the intermediate side. Yeah, because I felt that he was wasting time in the second division. And George Francis, my go-to man.
Francis.
But he used to turn the leg where it's so big. All right?
Yeah.
Oh, man. For real.
Real big. But those are the guys I would have played with. I would have played with Patchy Haynes as well, too. A little bit. So those are some of the guys that I played. Star Lashley, he's no longer with us. Star was with a relative.
Right, yeah. Argyle, you would have played with Argyle as well.
And I would have played with Peter Clark. You all remember Peter
Clark?
Yeah. Used to call him Hyde.
Yeah.
He
was a stylish batsman.
He was a stylish batsman. Yes. He continued the rest too, because he passed on a couple of years ago.
Yes.
Peter Clark passed on too?
Yeah, Peter. Yeah, unfortunately.
I also remember Charlie used to come to coach us at one point in time, and Peter loved to hook.
Yeah.
And Charlie always used to tell us not to hook as an opening batsman. Let the bowler get tired first before we start the hook.
Okay.
And Peter Clark was a compulsive hooker. And the very first ball I think probably Star bowled at him, and he hooked it onto the school wall on the big field. Wow. And Charlie told him that you're not to hook. So Charlie picked up the ball and proceeded to bowl a bouncer at him, and he licked it out the ground again. Wow. The next ball, another bouncer, and he licked it out the ground. And Charlie telling him, go to the next, you will never learn to bat.
Yeah.
But Peter could have. He was a good batsman. He was a very good batsman. Yeah. Very good. So we had a relatively strong team at school. But I don't think we really saw our full potential in trying to beat a lot of teams. We just tried to score as much runs as possible and get people out. We were never disgraced per se. We held our own. My most memorable time in the intermediate side was the opening game against Wanderers.
Yeah.
I actually scored 62 in the first innings and 154 in the second innings. And Mr. Moore presented me with a cricket bat on Monday at the assembly. That was a cherished bat for me. Wow. I think that year I ended that season with about 658 runs. Wow. Most by any school by far. I think George Reefer came along and beat it after that, sometime after. But that was a lot of runs to score in intermediate cricket at that time. And I remember playing against Empire 2 with Tony Bassett. He was Tony King. And he also gave me a lot of inspiration to continue to play the ball in the V. As an opening batsman. And I had learned that from the great Sir Guy Sobers when he had a training session. I was 16 years old. He had a training session for us at Kensington Oval. And he would see me because I always try to get behind the ball and pick up a single base behind square on both sides of the field. And he would tell me, no, Pedro, you need to start, especially when you come against fast bowlers that are really quick. And when Daniel was in that squad then to training, he said, what you need to do is to hit the ball right back at them.
Oh, boy.
And make them bend. Once they keep bending to pick up the ball, you're going to tire them out.
Yeah.
That is when you will then start to take advantage of them after that. But in the first 3-4 overs, just play it right back at them. And that stuck with me for my whole cricketing career. And even when I came to Antigua and started back playing cricket, I would tell a lot of youngsters the same thing. This is what you need to do to try to get these fast bowlers tired fast. You know, that
explains that straight drive that Sir Gary put in Lily when he made that 200 and something.
Yeah. So Gary, you know, and then, as a matter of fact, during that same practice sessions, I remember Sir Gary decided, let me get a knock, guys. So everyone says, sure. I mean, Gary was 40 by then. And when Daniel took an extra 2 steps or two more meters to running, and Gary made him look as if he was like a spinner. You know, I would feel like in a cover area, one ball to my left, the next ball is to my right. I look as if it's the same ball, but just playing one a little later than the other one, and going in different directions. And you know, it was a joy to watch him play at that age against, at that time, undoubtedly the fastest bowler that we had at that age, in that age group at that time.
A master class from a master batsman.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yes. Well, listen, we just have one of our Combermere brothers has entered the studio, David Strawn. Welcome, David.
Hi, guys. How you doing?
Good.
Hi, David. How you doing? Nice to see you, man.
Good to see you too. Good to see you. I don't understand why, you know, I could have this cricket talk when I was 15 years old. I would actually probably be a member of the team.
Excuse me, David. We talking about cricket, not netball.
Hess, I would like you to start interrupting me every time I come in the studio. You interrupting me. This is a young thing. Pastor, this is a body little boy. Pastor from my house in Gills. No, he get a lot.
Is David or not? Is David or not Cliff? Sorry, David, but is David or not Cliff?
No, Cliff was the captain. He was the vice captain.
Hardcore is the person on this panel here that is equal vintage to me, because Hardcore and I entered Combermere at the same time in the same class actually. And, so it's wonderful to see you guys, and I am here enjoying this experience so much that I can hardly contribute to it, because Pedro, you remember that I knew you as Angela's little brother, because my mother taught Angela at Alexandra.
Correct.
Right? And she was the apple of her eye, you know. And I would have known your older brother too as well. As I recall, he was very polite, quiet, sort of unassuming. So he didn't stand out like you did, because as I recall, with you, I was very envious of you, because here's this youngster coming to Combermere School and on the same floor as me. What the hell? He didn't get slapped up. You know, he never had to pay any dues. I had to pay a lot of dues. Nobody reach your pocket and pick up your pen and say, I want this pen. You can't ask him back for it, because he had somebody there looking over him. You know, so I was a little envious that this youngster could carry on conversation with adults and guys.
David, let me interrupt you there for a second. He also had another secret weapon that we didn't know about. You know that he's family to Patrick Ski?
But I didn't know that. But when you say Rose Hill, I would have to believe that you and Patrick were close enough. You, Patrick, and even Jeremy McCullum were y'all from that.
Jeremy, right?
Yeah, Jeremy's from French Village.
Yeah.
Patrick is my cousin from my mother's side.
Wow, Jilt side.
The Jilt side. My mother.
Yes. Well, you know how close Patrick and I were.
You really got Combermere blood in you, boy. You got Combermere blood in you from
all over.
Right?
But I'm enjoying this. I really am enjoying this, because I tell you, I followed. I know about Pedro's cricketing exploits, and I know that once you come under the wing of Dyson Maynard and probably some mentorship from Harcourt, you had to do very, very well. I always heard of you outside of Combermere, your cricketing exploits, and especially at Carrollton. And it was actually it was wonderful to hear it, because you never bragged, you never boasted, you never braggadocious, but you always used to to hold court. Whenever Pedro Corbin was at a crowd, he would hold court and people would listen. You know, if he could spin a good yarn, he could tell a good story. And I was a little envious of this youngster that could hold this sort of court, you know.
Mhm.
But I think, Pedro, in all seriousness, that Barbados' loss was Antigua's gain, you know, because you left Barbados and you went on to Antigua. We haven't touched on it yet, and I'm sure you would do that.
Yes.
But you became you because of your demeanor, because of your demeanor, and your personality, you would have endeared yourself to everybody. I think you went with the Goddard's group, wasn't it?
Yeah, I got transferred with the Goddard's group.
Well, wherever you were plunked, you would immerse yourself in that community and become one with them. So you have grown to become Mr. Antigua. And I recall, well, not too long ago, I mean, when I was thinking about a business opportunity, I would call you and you would put me on the right people, because everybody in Antigua knows Pedro Corbin, because Pedro Corbin is Mr. Antigua. So I don't be modest. You know, you are the kingpin in our sister territory, the Caribbean. So you know, it's wonderful to have you there, and we are very, very proud of you, Pedro. Really immensely proud of you, and I'm happy that after all these years, and you've made a living and a career for yourself in Antigua, that we were able to actually hook back up over the last couple of years, and you know, whenever you come in, we could get together and celebrate one way or the other.
That's right, yeah.
So let's segue into your movement from Barbados into Antigua, because now you living in Antigua longer than you've lived in Barbados, right? So tell us about Antigua and your life over there.
Well, I moved here in '83, in November 23rd to be exact, in 1983. I met my wife on the 3rd of January 1984, and she didn't take me on at all. When I met her, I was so, I mean, it's good to hear David say that I could hold court, but when I met my wife, I was lost for words. And the very first thing I remember asking her was, well, what is her claim to fame? And she later remarked about it that, you know, she was one who was this little bony boy with a big construction. In those days, we were wearing construction helmet hats type in the kitchen for health and safety. And she was one who was this little bony boy asking her such a forward question. But nevertheless, I persisted, and she eventually went out with me at a golf function that I had. I was by then part of the Golf Association as well as Cricket Association. And in April, we got married in July the same year.
Wow.
Wow. Okay,
yeah.
Pedro.
I didn't waste time. As a matter of fact,
not at all, man.
I think your exploits as an opening batsman.
Yeah,
right there.
But has know him as a batsman, he will build an innings.
Yeah,
he didn't build that innings at all. I'm just worried about that one.
Well,
aggressively.
What happened is that I had been through 2 long relationships prior to that, and that didn't materialize. So I said, this one, I am not going to waste time with this one at all. I'm going to jump straight into it. But it was at a stage of my life, having moved to Antigua, I felt it was time to settle down. I was going to be 27, and I felt it was time for me to settle down. And I told her we will get to know each other while we are still courting. And it has worked. So, you know, this year is now going to be our 40th anniversary.
So congrats, right?
Congratulations.
So having an Antiguan wife helped me tremendously to settle down in Antigua. Not only an Antiguan wife, but her family, but we're also a well-known family here. And what went against me though is a lot of the Antiguan guys had their eyes on my wife, and they allowed me to come to Antigua, put my eyes on her, and I took her away from all of them. So that it was always that he came to Antigua and took away one of Antigua's best women before anyone could even blink. And I told him, well, if you guys had this opportunity long before me and didn't take advantage of it, don't blame me.
No, Pedro, let me stop you there. She was lucky to get one of Barbados' best men. Understand? No, big Bajan talk here, Papa.
If my children will hear, I'm sure I will not hear the end of this. but I settled down, and
Yeah.
we have 3 beautiful daughters. One now lives in Texas. She's married, and she has a son who is 8 years old. She's into HR. She's an HR professional. My second daughter, she has her own real estate company. She's a serious entrepreneur, does exceedingly well. As a lot of people tell her, she's a chip off the old block, meaning her father. She is a serious, no nonsense person like I am, and she has a son. He is now in boarding school at 17.
All right, so let me stop you there for a quick second, Pedro. Mr. Producer, can you cue up some pictures so we can see these beautiful, beautiful daughters that Pedro has? And we got to keep them away from the Bajan boys. So cue up the pictures, Mr. Producer.
They all
These are Pedro's beautiful daughters. So give us the names, Pedro, from left to right.
Okay, from left to right is Sasha. She's a doctor. She's now in Atlanta doing her surgical internship. Tiffany, that's the one in the middle. She's the one who lives in Texas. She's the first. And Simone is the one to the extreme right. She's the second child.
Wow.
So there's Tiffany is going to be 39 this year. Let me see, she's about 85. Yes, right. So she'll be 39 this year. Simone is be 37, and Sasha is a little baby. She'll be 31 this year.
The only thing that's missing there, Pedro, is a boy to carry on your cricketing legacy.
Well, I have 2 grandchildren, 2 boys, right?
Yeah.
So they hopefully, but then they don't. Cricket is dying. So my grandson is into football, the first one, and the second one is also into football. So that is the whole family there. We try to get together every year as a family, whether it be here or somewhere else. My 3 daughters will always tell me, Dad, we will always be your daughters. Wherever you're going, we're coming. Once we get there, we know that you will take care of everything else. That means that I'm spending all the money. They're not spending anything.
Smart girls.
That's your beautiful wife there with you in Ghana, right?
That is my beautiful wife there with me in Ghana. We went there last year, October, to celebrate with a friend from Ghana who's actually living in Antigua to celebrate his 90th birthday.
Wow.
And that is the sort of ceremonial dress that we had to have. That is worn only on special occasions.
Wow.
And so that was a very interesting trip to Ghana. It reminded me a lot of the Caribbean. Very interesting place. If you ever have the opportunity, you should always take an opportunity to go and visit Ghana. It's a pretty place. Yeah. Right. So my life in Antigua. This is I started. Louis Greenwich is the one. Let's say the second from the youngster. He was the honorary counsel, and he had encouraged me to start a Barbadian Foundation here, society. So we formed the Society of Friends of Barbados, and this is our first attempt. We actually educated these 2 children through secondary school. We gave them a full scholarship. We didn't go through the Ministry of Education for this. All we needed were the people who passed the exams with good colors, and we went and did the research ourselves because we really wanted to help children who were disadvantaged. In those days, if we would just say, okay, here's the sponsorship money, it would have gone to one of the political elite people. But we wanted people who were really underclass. That guy is now actually a doctor at this point in time, Dr. Biza.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and he does not pass me. Very good. And I think that was going back in 95. This is when I took the guy out onto the field to congratulate Brian Lara for scoring the breaking his record, the 366.
Yes.
I had actually, the day before the game, before this innings, I had contacted Gary 2 nights before to tell him that we think that something special is going to happen, and if he's available to come up to Antigua. And Gary came up to Antigua. I was able to get him put up. I sponsored his ticket to bring him up, and our company has a box, and he was there in our box watching on while the action was going on out there. So that was a tremendous occasion for me. I was the assistant secretary of the Cricket Association at that point in time.
Is that Greenwich there? Is that Gordon in the picture there?
I am not too sure. It does look. I don't think Gordon was here.
Okay.
Right, no.
Okay.
Actually, that was. I don't remember what it is. That was Ken Hutton Isaac. He was the president of the Association. Yeah. And I had the opportunity to meet Yaga Lawrence Rowe.
Yeah.
In Florida at the game India versus West Indies. That was the year before. And he still looks in good shape, I must say. It was good talking to him. Really, really, really great. Those of you who would remember that 302 he put down at Kensington.
Yes, I can.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I always remember the 48 the evening before, because the ball, the 6 that he hit off Barbados, I think it was, and landed about 2 feet away from me. It
Well,
was a tremendous game, and that was I never had the opportunity to meet him, and that was tremendous opportunity for me to meet him there.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember some of these reprobates there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember
That's
this.
AJ. That's AJ.
That's from right to left. That's Andrew Phillips, Amuba.
Yeah.
That's Tony Bayer. That's Neil Haynes. That's Pedro and myself. We were at the Golden Sands.
Correct.
Yes.
So
that's a group of Combermerians.
We just
And a lot of detention hours between them 5 guys there.
That was great. Cause we just bought up at Golden Sands. We arranged to meet there or something the other, but it was
Yes.
I hadn't seen Neil for ages, and Neil was
that was recent, right? Hess, wasn't that?
That was a few years ago, about 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was good times. Yeah.
Very nice.
So
Very nice.
my life here in Antigua has been good. I'm now retired.
I got a question, Pedro.
Mhm.
Besides meeting that wonderful woman, at what point did you know Antigua would be your home?
I did not know me after I met her.
After, because it didn't have to. It didn't. You had a home in Barbados. We didn't kick you out. What time? When did you actually realize that Antigua was it for you?
I would say it was around 1997, 98. Our kitchen in Barbados was going through a very difficult time, and I was called Tuesday evening around 7:00 by my boss to tell me that they've just fired the general manager. We're in a lot of trouble, possibility of losing British Airways account for the whole region.
Wow.
And they needed me to be in Barbados the next day. I said, I really can't make it the next day. I have to discuss this with my wife first. So we discussed it the night and the next day with my kids. And I said it's going to be a 3-month stint at first. But I'm told I'd be able to be back and forth. And I went down to Thursday for ostensibly 3 months. And I ended up spending 9 months in Barbados. But I was back and forth. I was managing Barbados and Antigua at the time as well too. And when they came up, by the time I got the kitchen to settle down and we secured the British Airways contract, they advertised the position for the general manager in Barbados. And I applied for the position, and they really wanted me to come back home. But I said, but I am not leaving Antigua. Why can't I manage Antigua and Barbados as I've been doing for the last 9 months? Mm-hmm. And they wanted to have a permanent person in Barbados and offer me the position. And I said, sorry, I am not leaving Antigua with my family. Because my wife also had a very, very good job. She was working with the OECS then at that time. And she was a director. And it would have meant that I would have had to be commuting because she did not want to move to Barbados. And as a good husband I am, I decided, well, I will stay in Antigua. It was at that point in time that I knew that my life would be in Antigua because I couldn't just uproot her. And then another opportunity came around in the early 2000s for Jamaica, for me to go to Jamaica to manage the whole of Jamaica. At Jamaica, we had 2 kitchens in Jamaica, one in Kingston and one in Montego Bay. And they wanted me to go to Jamaica. And again, by then she'd moved to Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, and she was the deputy director. And it just didn't make sense for her to uproot again. So by then I said, well, my life will be in Antigua. And but I had already built a home here in Antigua. My kids went to school, all went to school here. But strange enough, my 3 daughters love Barbados.
To visit?
They would go, no, they would live in Barbados.
All right.
Yeah. Simone went to university in Barbados, to UB in Barbados. Sasha went to university in Barbados too. Tiffany she went to Canada. But they all spent a lot of time in Barbados, the summers with my family. So they all grew up loving Antigua, loving Barbados, because my brothers, we all had children around the same age, so they all got along very well. So they love Barbados, and they will go and live there and leave us.
Yeah.
So, but I don't regret it because Barbados is just an hour's flight away. So I was able, because of my job, I was able to get home very often to visit my family. And my family would always come up to Antigua very often. We would alternate Christmases, one Christmas in Antigua, one Christmas in Barbados. And so it was not necessarily that you miss home, like Hess is in New York and he can't get out of New York at all, you know. Antigua was just close by for me to get, Barbados is just close by to get down. So I don't regret it. And I've made all my investments here. I have a lot of friends here, and I've settled into Antigua life. Right? I've given back a lot to society. I spent 10 years with the Antigua Cricket Association, 3 years with the Leeward Islands Cricket Association.
Okay.
I've spent about 15 years being a member of the Employees Federation and got up to be the treasurer. I spent another 10 years with the Employees Federation, of which I was the president for about 6 years. I was given the task of being the chairman of the National Labour Board, the first private sector person to be asked to be chairman of the National Labour Board. And we were given the task by the Prime Minister at the time, Mr. Baldwin Spencer, to review the entire Labour Code. I think Antigua is the only country in the Caribbean that had a Labour Code. And we went from front to back to redo the Labour laws. And that encompassed me having to spend a lot of time in the various neighbourhoods to educate people about the changes that we want to make to the Labour Code and to hear their views and whatnot. And it was not really unsurprising to hear some people ask me some of those questions, and some of those even started from my cricket days, because I've been a very outspoken person. Why is it that this Barbadian can come here and hold on such senior positions in the country? And my answer to them used to be, I would answer it on the radio to myself to say, well, it's not my fault that you guys don't want to do it. Somebody has to do it, and I choose to do it. So life has been good, and I think I got a lot of respect out of those endeavors. To the point now, although I am retired, people still ask me to get back involved. And I've told them, you know, I've paid my dues. It's time for me to, as Harcourt said, enjoy retirement.
Well, let me tell you, unfortunately, we've come to the end of our hour, and it has been great talking to you, Pedro. Thank you so much for your time. Harcourt, it's always great to see you. David, it's good to see you, but sometimes.
Well, guys, thanks a lot for having me. And I must say, I did enjoy the other time. When you're having fun, time flies.
Most definitely.
I look forward to joining you guys at some point in time when whoever else is in the spotlight. And look forward to seeing you sometime soon again.
Yes, sir. And I would say to you,
before we go, if you will permit me. So today was the first day of the BSAC. This is the secondary school athletic championships, inter-school sports, as we know them. So this is the first day of field events only, and there were like 8 events today. So in the girls, Harrison College leads with 34 points, St. Michael's 26, Combermere 24, QC 14, Coach Barry 14, Aline 10. That's the top 6.
Okay.
And in the boys, Combermere 31, QC 19, St. Michael's 18, Foundation 16, Aline 11, and Coach Barry 10. So just up to date on that.
Right.
That's where I spent my.
Well, thank you
that's
all,
I spent a lot of my
gentlemen.
time.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Pedro, I'd like to say thank you again, my brother. And as always, the Combermere password, up and on.
Up and on.
Up and on. Okay, guys.